And welcome to the show. This is PulpMythos. I'm Brian here with Larry and Spencer, and we're going to be discussing a film called Under the Silver Lake. This is full spoilers. We're basically just discussing our thoughts, our feelings, how we viewed certain aspects of the film, what we liked, what we didn't like. But we are going into spoilers. So if you have not seen the film, you don't want to be spoiled, tune out now, watch the movie, come back, and then you can join in on the discussion in the comment section. A lot of content on the channel. Hit the upvote. Leave a comment, like I said, if you've seen the film, if you have thoughts. And yeah, let's start. So Larry recommended this film about a year and a half ago. He thought it'd be something I'd be into, and he's right in many, many ways. This is definitely a kind of film that I would be into, but I have a lot of issues with the way this film sort of played out, and we're going to go into that. But first I want to just, what is this movie? If you had to define this movie, Larry, specifically because you're the one that recommended it, how would you define this movie?
I wouldn't just, well, people often describe it as sort of a modern noir, and I guess it is sort of a modern hipster noir. It's and I guess that's it, hipster noir. Because
I like that.
we're following a guy he's kind of a scumbag, but he's looking for a missing girl that he had like a night with, I believe.
Not even a full night, a couple hours. Yeah,
that's true. That's true.
Now that you mentioned that, before you continue, Larry, it reminded me of Sin City with Marv.
Yeah.
Like that one night, and he fell in love. It's a lot like that.
Yeah, it's a very old school noir, like you said. And yeah, Sin City, which is that's noir done right in a modern era. But yeah, it's that guy. You're right, Larry. That's the film. It's him trying to figure out what happened to this girl. Now it's in fucking sane, the journey he goes on and the things that happen in the revelations. And I'm going to go with my biggest gripe up front. But let's go into the production and stuff like that. It's too long. It's too damn long, in my opinion. And I don't have an issue with long films. I love Blade Runner. I love Blade Runner 2049. But if you're going to give me a story this movie is almost 2.5 hours. When the ending credits hit, I need to be able to stand up with a big smile on my face and say, wow, that hit me. This movie to me doesn't do that. And so that was my biggest gripe. You get to the ending, I'm like, that's a long ass movie to get to where we got. That's my number one gripe is the length.
Well, that makes me feel good about myself, because that's one of my major gripes with it too. Even though I recommended it, I also think this movie's a little too long. It's just because I wondered if I only had the patience to sit through it, even though it felt like it dragged a little. Because when I watched it, it was the middle of the night. I was sick, but I was wide awake. So I had the patience to sit there for the whole time. But it also felt like it dragged a little in parts, and that is a big gripe of mine for this one.
Oh, it does. Spencer, your biggest gripe. You had a much bigger issue with the ending, also.
Yeah, as far as just the one biggest issue, the end didn't feel. Leading up to the very end credits, I wasn't super excited, but I was on board because I was trying to see where it was going. There's this big mystery, and then towards the end, with the whole their way of being ascended and stuff, I was just like, all right, I have an issue with that. But I was like, well, let's see how they wrap it up. And then they don't. And that's my biggest issue, is that after spending that much time, it felt like it took that much time for no reason. Like the end itself didn't justify the 2 hours and I think 16 minutes or something without the credits.
Without credits, yeah.
Yeah. And for me, that long of a movie to not have a payoff at the end, and there was some things that I brought it to Brian afterwards. I was like, well, what about this? What about these things? What if this happened? But when I analyze the movie and I go that far in depth, like if I should have some kind of answer, or I should have some redeeming thoughts about it. But with this, my redeeming thoughts were the parts I thought was funny. and cine the cinematography. I don't know, cinegraphically. It like
Cinematography, yeah.
yeah, the way it was shot, like I loved it, and it also gave. And I was telling Brian, it gives me hope because it wasn't that difficult. Like I was like, well, shit, that could be a short film version of something we could do. Like the way it was shot, it was well done, but the story itself just had, I don't know, it felt, and I don't know, I'm not going to say it. I was going to say something else, but it felt like a movie that I had seen before that made a lot of references to things. And they were trying to tell us that this is what it meant. This is what it meant. And I'm like, well, I should be able to get some of that from watching it. I shouldn't have to like piece everything together and draw my own conclusions because I don't know. With that kind of movie, I didn't feel like that's what I should have to have done.
Yeah, yeah. And I see what you're saying about the end too. Like that was one of my gripes. This was a very weird movie, and yeah, the ending was weird, but it felt, a little disjointed. And I feel like, like my big gripe is, I think it's a combination of those two things, the length and the ending, because, during the end, I feel like it could have, or at least that it should have, it should have been things should have been a little clearer. And, maybe it shouldn't have necessarily been that if we were going to go for 2 hours and 30 minutes, that. And I felt the whole cereal box clue was a little convoluted.
There was a lot of, in terms of the clues and stuff, a lot of convoluted things that I was like, what? I mean, because at the end, the big revelation of, okay, Larry, like I said, if you've done research, because these were the aspects that were a little confusing to me. Okay, so you're telling me that there's this organization, we'll call them that, super rich people. They build basically tombs under the ground. They take 3 brides. They believe they'll ascend at some point. Okay. They keep this a secret. There's this female assassin. Now, that was what we were like, is she real or not real? But it seems like they have an assassin they can send after you. Is this supernatural? Is this a person? I don't fucking know. So we have all those things. I was sort of fine with all that. I'll tell you the thing. What was up with the dog killer? That was one of the things that I'm like, okay, did I miss something? Was there a clue, or was there something obvious that I just went over my head? What was the point of the dog killer plotline?
Oh, I think I did read something up on that. It just hit me because, I watched this a while ago and I researched it, and unfortunately, due to work, I didn't get a chance to look back over it. But the dog killer, believe it or not, if I'm remembering correctly, believe it or not, if you look back and there's clues of this, throughout the whole movie, you're following the dog killer because the protagonist is the dog killer.
See, and Spencer, it's funny you say that, because when we were talking, he was like, "Well, what if the main guy he had some kind of idea that we were following, um, which I'm fine with, but it's like,
Well,
why?"
well, what I was thinking is like you go through the movie, and we talked about it too, Brian. The voyeurism part. There's a lot of
Yeah, big theme.
voyeurism in this movie. It's a big thing. It starts with him, staring at these girls with binoculars, and he's got like the shades drawn. So it felt very much like a Hitchcock movie. He's spying on everybody. The whole drone sequence with Topher Grace, he's spying. And then at the very end, he's looking into what we think is his own apartment. So throughout watching this, I'm thinking that perhaps, like you said, he's the dog killer. He's the one doing these things. He's like the reincarnation of this person who's trying to, take all these people out. But by the end of it, I don't know if it's like drugged filled hallucinations, because they reference it several times. There's, the drug use, and then
The cookie scene.
like,
and
yeah.
stuff like that, yeah.
But my thing, you talk about, the rich people, who the fuck, if they're making millions and billions of dollars being able to build these concrete tombs, is going to use a Nintendo Power magazine for their clue? And that's why I'm so like,
I have a thought on that. Yeah, to me so let's jump right into that.
Yeah, you had a
Yeah. So I don't think it's what's the word? The filmmaker, in my opinion, was trying to say several things in the course of the film, and one of the things was a major critique on consumerism. And there's this whole aspect, and there's several scenes where they discuss this, especially when he meets the songwriter guy.
I got so much to say about
And it's been, and that was one of my favorite scenes actually. But the whole idea of, you grow up in your life, and a cereal box is important to you. You remember the art on it. You a Nirvana song speaks to you. This video game is a big part of your childhood. All these things that are consumable products that are sold to you are basically help shape who you are and who you become. And at the end of the day, though, it's just product. And should we be investing as much into it? And it felt like he was trying to say something. It got a little muddled, and I couldn't completely understand the message, but it seemed like he was trying to have some kind of commentary on the idea of we put too much into the things we grew up with. That's what I was getting from it, but I don't know. What are your guys' thoughts on sort of that messaging, or do you see it a different way?
Yeah, I kind of agree with that. That it's a it's a message about consumerism, and that and it seems like they're using nostalgia to manipulate, like you said, these old shows, this old cereal box. I did, like, you pieced it together, in fact, a little better for me, because I was thinking, like, Spencer is like, why these things? Why, like you said, an old issue of Nintendo Power or something? Why an old cereal box?
Playboy,
Yeah,
his first issue he jerked off to.
Yeah, that, and it's because I was like, these aren't things that rich people typically have. They don't have a connection to it, like, but we do as a consumer. But I guess it does kind of work, because these are potentially these people that would, build these tombs for themselves, or these monuments to themselves. These are things that they would produce. So if they're hiding clues for themselves in plain sight, in their products, that makes sense. But these things are more relevant for us, which is why I thought the clues were a little weird, because like the common man, reads Nintendo Power, or eats that cereal. You're not seeing Bill Gates eat a lot of cereal. At least I don't think so.
Yeah.
I don't know, man. He looks to me like a Honey Bunches of Oats kind of guy.
That's a good line.
That's got to be your thumbnail now. Bill Gates eating Honey Bunches of Oats.
But yeah, I agree. Like the consumerism part of it, to me that wasn't the thing that took me out of the movie. Like there was parts of the movie that I was dying laughing. Like the whole part where he was talking about, because it was like a movie from the 90s shot in current day, referencing stuff from like the 50s. So it was
That's the hipster stuff. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, but well, like the whole Nirvana poster when he was just like, yeah, I saw him in concert, and I was like, well, he died in like 94. So if this is taking place in current day, I was like, he was what, 1, 2, so it, and then he got it, like it's a signed Nirvana poster, and she's like, oh, that's really cool. And that's not a reference that people from nowadays would get originally, before like YouTube and everything else. But, and we've talked about that before, things that are nostalgic for us because they came from, the 80s, 90s, kids today are using them because of not only our nostalgia and us wanting it, so people are producing it for us, but with, YouTube and reaction videos and Snapchat and TikTok and all these things. Like I found out recently that Brendan Fraser's like a big deal again. And I've always liked Brendan, but he's like having this resurgence because of the internet. So all these things that are nostalgic to us are new to some people. So it's one of those things where I got it. It didn't take me out of the movie. It just, to me, was almost like another subplot that didn't matter. So if you would have shaved some of that stuff out, it would have maybe flowed a little bit better.
Well, I will say, to go back to the assassin, because you mentioned the assassin earlier, Brian.
Yeah.
I think the plot with that, because the movie kind of makes it seem like, oh, they got like, to again reference comic books again, they got a whole Court of the Owls thing going on.
Completely. I like said that when we were watching it. Yeah.
There's this trained group of assassins, but what I think it was in reality, or at least what the movie was showing it to be, is that they kind of got that, but not really. But it's more of a Charles Manson thing, that some of these girls that they lure in, they like they give them drugs and things and convince them to do this. You know, they lure them in with this lifestyle and the promise of other things, and they turn some of them into that. But you know, it's not as effective as the mythos leads you to believe because you know, well, we saw what happened during that scene.
I wanted Batman to show up at one point. Yeah.
Yeah.
With the drugs and the girls, like we talked about that too, because me and Brian were debating on why the three, and I just think that initially that was just what these hedonistic guys wanted. They just wanted three women to kind of spend.
Yeah, I didn't know if there was some deeper meaning with
the numbers,
the number three. Why always three women?
And I don't think so. But like you said, convincing these girls that are all from this service that are basically being groomed to feed these other rich people
to die in a tomb.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, you know, and I think it's part they've built their own mythos around themselves because, you know, and it seems super far fetched, but also not in a way because how many times in recent history, and we're like, and I'm sure it's happened a lot in the past too. We're just getting better at recording it because everyone's got a camera or a way to view these things now. You know, how often do we see a rich guy lose himself and pull like a Kanye West or a Lil Wayne and, you know, and sort of declare themselves to be a god?
Well, they just had the trials of that one cult. I can't remember the name of it, but you know, the girl from Smallville and
Cult of Personality.
Yeah, NXIVM.
NXIVM. There you go. Although CM Punk might be returning next week. Any wrestling fans out there? AEW Friday Night Rampage. Cult of Personality is the song he comes out to. Yeah, so yeah, Larry, that whole NXIVM thing, yeah, bam. I mean, that shit literally is happening in real time, and that's, you know, yeah,
Right. Yeah, you know, and it's just that this kind of weird stuff, you know, you watch the movie and it just seems so off the wall. Why would anybody want this? But then some of the crazy things you see celebrities and the super rich dudes, it's not too far off. You know, that NXIVM guy was building a little cult and had his wives and everything.
I've just remembered going back to Andrew Garfield's character being the dog killer. It does make sense. I started thinking the scene with the dog biscuits in his pocket and the guy interrogating him. Why do you have these? Why do you have these? And he is a weird fucking dude. The whole, you know what I mean? Like, and there's so many questions about, well, what is going on with this guy and what's so. I can see that. I guess I don't know how it connects to the bigger plot, but I don't know. There was another thing. I was like, this should have been a show, not a movie. I think you could have told a 6 to 8 episode series and dug more into this organization, and if he is the dog killer, more into that and the backstory. I don't know.
Well, and I think that, you know, at the end, the very, very end, the face he makes and he like smiles at the camera, like that to me felt like a Clockwork Orange or god damn, what's the other movie? Like Maniac, or, you know, one of those movies where they break that fourth wall to kind of show you that they're the one. But one of those things where, yeah, there's a couple hints, but to me it doesn't matter. And that's the part that bothered me. If he was a dog killer and then he was trying to use that to, you know, lure Sarah away, like there should have been some other like tie-in, because to me the tie-in was to the comic and tie-in to that old actor. So clearly he was into the old movies, he was into these old things, he was talking to his mom sent him like a side movie, he watched it on VHS, like, so there's a lot of things where, you know, that I don't remember the old actor's name that the little comic books were based off of.
I can't remember. There was a lot of name drops with actors, including the one his mom was a fan of.
Gene Autry, I think.
Yeah, this was also somewhat of a love letter, like I said, to Hitchcock, to a lot of these old films, old actors. You know, there was a lot of that in this film, which goes to the oddity, going back to talking about 90s, 80s nostalgia. Kids that, in other words, we're referencing Nirvana and all these things, but then we're going to reference movies that are, you know, 40, 50 years older. This is a movie made for Hollywood. I think you know what I mean. This is an
Yeah.
LA film at its core, and that kind of film, which I'm fine with. But at moments you do sort of smirk and say, "Okay, this is a film. This is for film students."
Yeah, yeah, it feels that way. It's very Hollywood centric and very much rooted in that culture in a big way.
The James Dean statue, pet his head. And all. I mean, like it's like no 16-year-old would get any of this shit.
Well,
Um,
and by Newton, like there are two things that are completely. Now I understand that that's part of the clue. Like nobody would do that and then go sit under Newton, like without any further instructions. But on the same note, to me, that's Isaac Newton's considered to be one of the smartest people who have ever lived, and you have him touching James Dean. So it's like, is Hollywood smart? Like it felt like a very weak kind of like high five to Hollywood itself, and I was like, Jesus Christ,
I did like the homeless king guy.
dude.
I like that character
Yeah.
a lot, actually. Um, I like the old dude, the old music guy. We didn't go.
Yeah, it was my
I
favorite.
love that scene.
Yeah.
I very much love that scene. Um, there were two other themes I want to go into, two specific themes besides we talked about voyeurism and consumerism. Uh, the point there's a couple. He's constantly asked, how's work? What are you doing for work? How's work? How's that going? You have to work. What else are you going to do? Like he even goes into a scene where he talks about he's tired of being asked that all the time, and sort of this idea of what's the point, and sort of the structure of our lives in the modern day of work, and he's sort of rebelling against it in a big way. It seems like it's trying to. Like I said, it's similar to the consumerism. I can't quite put my finger on what he's trying to say, but clearly he's trying to say something regarding our purpose or our path in life in terms of the point of work. Any thoughts on that?
Well, yeah, it just
I
very
agree.
much. Well, yeah, like you said, he just kind of seems to be drifting through life and the movie, and he's ignoring a lot of things that are building up. And like y'all said, he's he showed up to Hollywood to act, and he was trying to act like everybody else in that town. Uh, but other than that, he's not really working. I believe he's behind on rent and everything, and he's ignoring all that. But he's doing a lot of drugs and he's sleeping a questionable amount. And then there's the whole you know dog killer habit that stems from like another mental illness of some kind that he's also ignoring. Uh, I don't know particularly, like you said, what the message was about, just his, the nature of who he is and the fact that he's seemingly given up on actual life in order to sort of live out this fantasy and do this investigation. He's kind
Yeah.
of ignoring everything that he needs to do in order to just seek everything that he wants in life. He's just given up on all his needs and kind of has an attitude like some people. I'm not going to mention any names, but
We're trying to throw me under the bus, Larry.
it's like none of us, but people that maybe listen, like just it's he's living a very much a life of like, well, that stuff will take care of itself, or it probably won't. I'll just do the things I want to do. I'll take drugs. I'll go to parties. I'll pursue these women.
Yeah.
Well, and I think too with movies nowadays, you can draw inspiration off of like anything. There's so many movies that have covered so many topics, but just that specific topic reminded me a lot of like Fight Club, because you work hard to buy shit you don't need. Like it's very much it goes back to that consumerism kind of thing. He wants to live his life. And the girl with the balloons, like I think her name on IMDb is Balloon Girl. They never do, and that was funny too. When we were watching it, I was looking through IMDb because a couple of the people looked familiar and stuff, and it was funny because there's very few named characters. A lot of them just have Bar Girl 1, was it something Wife 2, but none of them were named. But the Balloon Girl was telling him, "Hey, you got a very short amount of time in your life to be free and have fun. Why are you worried about all this? Just have fun." And I think that we go back to the Fight Club aspect, live your life, be free of the consumerism of having to buy shit you don't need, like that kind of stuff too. So there's a lot of little themes which, like I said, didn't take me out of the movie. I was tracking a lot of them. I was like, oh, okay. But then by the end, I didn't feel like they mattered. And that's, like I brought up at the beginning, that's the part that bummed me out.
Another the final theme that I saw, and if there's more you guys want to talk about, and it ties into this one, is dwelling on the past. There's a couple scenes specifically where he's talking with his buddy Topher Grace, hipster Grace at this point, and they're doing the drone thing, and he talks about how, do you ever feel like you screwed up at some point? You're living in an alternate world where I was supposed to be something and I'm not, and just just thinking about how he isn't where he wants to be. And then I feel that the scene where he's on the phone with Sarah at the end, she's in the tomb, there's no escaping it, that is the life she is in. And they have a little conversation, and she basically says, it is what it is. This is where I'm at. There is no going back. Therefore, I need to focus on going forward. And so she's like, I got to make dinner tonight. And he's like, well, I hope you have a good dinner. And to me, believe it or not, I thought there was a lot of importance in those lines, because it was almost the idea of embracing the future and not the past. And I don't know. That's what I was getting out of that particular scene. What do you guys think about sort of that messaging, especially going back to the Topher Grace?
I think that's where they should have ended the fucking movie. Like, if he would have passed out and woke up a few minutes later and then just made peace with it, and then just end it with an inner monologue thing, and then that'd be over. Or reading another one of the comics where he just kind of pieces things together. To me, the last 25 minutes made the movie more convoluted, whereas that, if it would have ended right there, I think the message that you just said, Brian, would have been the main takeaway, as opposed to now, I don't have one.
So yeah, and like you said, it seems to be in an odd way. It kind of shows her as, even though she's put herself in this weird kind of messed up situation, it kind of shows her as having her life together more than he does.
I think that's what I was getting out of that scene. Yeah.
And because he's like, he seems to be trying to outline, okay, this is an odd situation. Are you okay? And she's like, well, I did what I did, and there's no going back. I've got to address it now. All I can do is make dinner and, handle this as is, whereas everything he does, even the cinematography, seems to be just showing that he's just drifting through life and, putting everything that's an actual need for him on the back burner.
I loved when he beat the shit out of that kid. Scratched up his car. But scenes like that, even, I'm like, that was fun. But we're talking about the movie being too long. You could have trimmed this movie down. There's a lot of little things like that I'm like, why was that in the movie? He goes to 58 parties in this movie. I mean, some of them were cool, but I guess it was gathering clues. I'm just going through things I liked. I rather enjoyed Jesus and Dracula's Brides. That was great. And the squirrel dying, it was a cool effect. I was into that. Anything stick out in your guys' minds that that sort of stuck with you in the film?
There were lots of little things, and like I said, the voyeurism part, and then the last sequence where he's staring into his own apartment. I had almost a split personality vibe, and the dog killer aspect of it, because if he's denying the dog killer part, clearly had a thing for his ex-girlfriend, who's she's in Magicians.
I forgot about that. Yeah, the billboard girl.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So you have him, dwelling on that, and that's the reason in his own head that he's justifying why he has dog treats, and he may genuinely believe that. As much as he's blacking out, partying and stuff, I think that it's almost like a split personality thing, because when he shows up at the end to the bird lady's apartment, she didn't look surprised to see him. It wasn't just this, "Oh, you finally came over," kind of thing. She did not look surprised. Also, when he was coming back to his apartment, he had all the groceries and stuff, and he felt like he was being followed. Like, what was the point of that? Like, it didn't feel like a point unless it was him envisioning him following himself. You know what I'm saying? Like, because that goes back to the voyeurism part. Like, he was spying on himself. So there's a lot of little things that I liked, and kind of looking back, I was like, that's really cool effect. That's a cool idea. But the focus, it was like they were trying to focus on too many things as opposed to just bringing it down to like one or two things and then just making the movie about that instead of consumerism, voyeurism. Like
He had like 6 movies, and he just jammed them all his ideas into one.
the movie with the short red-haired girl that was like watching her own scene. I looked it up because I was looking at some of the other movies that this director did. So I was scrolling through his stuff, and it's like something, The American Sleepover or something. But that scene was from another one of his movies, the one that was on the big screen in the park or whatever. That was like scene shot for shot from another one of his movies. It was just a different actress. So I thought that, and that's another cool kind of thing. So was I impressed with what he was able to do? Yeah. Did I think it was really cool? Yep. Did I think he was, some of the, how it was shot, the cinematography of it was good? Yep. Did I think that it was a well fleshed out story that had a point? Nope.
Well, yeah, I think, like you said, the cinematography was pretty incredible. There's a lot of cool scenes. There's a lot of cool elements of this. Like I was very curious. Like, they really drew me in with the whole comic book thing and the assassin early on until we actually got the assassin. I think I agree with what Brian said earlier, that this may have worked better. Like, if he wanted to do this in longer form as like a mini series of some kind rather than a movie.
Yeah.
And like Spencer said, I think it showed, like, even us, if we wanted to film something or do something that, you can do a lot. You don't need a crazy budget to do some of the big things they did here. Like, because there were a lot of cool elements. Like you said, I really loved when he went to go see the musician. It's just there's a lot of really good ideas in here. It's just, like I said, there's a lot going on, and there's a lot that really could have been fleshed out more. But I felt that that this would be a good movie for us to watch, just because it's a good take. It's a good attempt, I think, at modern noir, and it definitely gave you that feeling with the cinematography and the style of investigation, and that feeling overall was very fun in this movie.
It felt like if you took a Grant Morrison comic series that was 6 issues and you just read issue 2.
Yeah,
and you're like, what the hell? I don't understand what's going on.
That's a really good description.
I'm watching Doom Patrol, so I'm very Grant Morrison mode right now. This filmmaker, his name is that made Under the Silver Lake, David Robert Mitchell. He made another film which I absolutely love called It Follows, which is phenomenal. If you've not seen It Follows, definitely check that movie out. This film it came out after It Follows. Clearly, It Follows is a very simple premise. Very simple premise. He's a good filmmaker, in terms of what he can do. I just think he got a little too ambitious with this film.
And that goes back to what I was saying about the singular focus. It Follows had a lot of symbolism, a lot of meaning, but it all led to the end of the story. Like, it felt very like connected, and it felt like a story that flowed, and all the little sub meanings flowed with the main topic. Whereas this one did not do that. Like, there was so many subplots that it made the main plot questionable. Like, I don't even know what the main plot was at this point. And that's the part I have the issue with. Like, I don't know what I was supposed to take away from this movie. Whereas It Follows, I have a pretty good idea. So it's just, like I said, there's so many things in this movie that I liked, but overall, the end of it, I guess us talking about it means that it meant something, because we're sitting there bullshitting about it for over an hour, but it's one of those things where I did not understand. And I feel like I'm a pretty decently smart individual, but for me to not grasp what that was is mind-boggling to me.
Well, yeah, absolutely, and it is definitely it's definitely a film that leaves you with a lot of questions and and mysteries, but it's interesting enough that and there's enough mystery there, and some of it, like you said, should be clarified a little more, but it definitely makes you want to talk about it, and I'll give it that much. You definitely want to talk about it because any other reviewers that I've seen who have seen this film, or anyone who's sort of fleshed out, who is the dog killer or what was the deal with this element, you have full blown video essays. You rarely have like a 5-minute video about this film or someone giving you a short form explanation. So it definitely makes you talk. And I think someone said it best when they said about this filmmaker. I loved It Follows as well, by the way. It's a great horror movie. It's like that. This director, even if you do not like what you saw, you're definitely engrossed in what it is or in the meaning of what it is that you saw with a lot of his films.
Yeah, because even though we were when the credits started rolling, we're like, what the fuck? And then, but we ended up going. Spencer made coffee, and we sat there for like a half hour talking about it. And that's when I wrote my notes on a piece of tissue. But yeah, it's an interesting film. I'm checking. He has nothing lined up. There's nothing on his IMDb. I mean, this film came out like 2018, so I guess COVID has slowed production on everything. But there's not even a pre-production thing, so I don't know what he's doing at the moment. Maybe he's crafting another script. I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah, he's a like to go from It Follows to this, and I'm not sure if I've seen any of his other work. I am curious about the rest of his body of work though.
Not much. He only the only done like one other thing, I believe. It's fairly new in as far as filmmaking. He was born in. He's older than us though.
He's 44.
Yeah. So
Only done,
yeah,
like, 3 or 4 things. Now he did do all of it. Like he wrote,
oh yeah,
produced and directed Under the Silver Lake, It Follows, and that The Myth of an American Sleepover is his other one.
yeah. He's a true writer, director, filmmaker, like that kind of guy. So yeah, and that's pretty much all I have to say. Is there anything else you guys want to tackle on this film before we wrap this up?
No, because I mean I could spin down more rabbit holes with little aspects of it, but it would just keep going without any answers. So it's like we said, it's one of those movies that we talked about it for a long time. I didn't like how it ended, and because I didn't like how it ended, it wouldn't be something that would make sense to watch again because I don't think it would explain anything. However, I'm not mad that I watched it, which I am.
Yeah.
So like it's
Yeah.
so.
Well, yeah, and because of that, it's one of those films where when I recommended it, I didn't know whether either of you would actually even like the film, but it's worth talking about, and
Yeah.
it's something that, love it or hate it, I feel like you come out of it with the same attitude that I have. That like even if you didn't like it, you're like, well, I want to talk to somebody about this, so I want someone else to see this film. Because there's a lot to unpack.
Yeah, I agree. It's definitely a movie that there's a lot to talk about. So yeah, this is perfect for like these reviews, definitely. Next week, anybody listening, one more week of just a film review, and then we're kicking into our old school style of doing several shows. All the shows are about to start back. But next week we'll be doing the new HBO Max film, Lisa Joy's movie, Remnants, starring Hugh Jackman. Science fiction, the same team that brought you Westworld, which we're huge fans of. So very much interested in that film. Yeah, that's about it. I guess we're done. We will see y'all next time.
Bye.
Bye.